Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are in the world. Hi, and thanks for joining us for this VMworld panel with opening acts. Today, we are asking a very serious question, and that is virtual demos, do they matter? And today, joining me on this panel, I've got Mark Crawford, I've got Frank Yu, and I've got Morris Harty. And I'm going to just throw it straight out there and ask you guys to introduce yourself. So, Frank, would you like to go first?
Absolutely. Thanks, Patrick. My name is Frank Yu. I'm the Principal Application Experience Architect at Kemp Technologies. I've been in the technology industry for, I roll my eyes because I say 30 years now, and I've been dealing with load balancing technology for about 20 years. So I like talking about the technology. I'm a geek at heart, and I look forward to this wonderful discussion.
Okay, Mark, would you like to go next?
Sure. So my name is Mark Crawford. I work for NJVC. I've worked there for about 9 years. My background, my expertise area is in VMware virtualization. I've been using that technology for probably around 15 years now. And my primary focus is in government contracts at NGA. So I have a lot of experience in the government environment.
Sure, and Morris, not Maurice, I won't say it in French accent. Go, feel free to go ahead.
They both work, Patrick, no problem at all. So Morris Harty, and Director of Demo Strategy Enablement for Dell Technologies, and working for Dell Technologies for the last 15 years, and responsible for a global team and an online platform that kind of enables demo capability or demonstration capability for products and solutions across the globe. And delighted to be here to join the panel and to chat about virtual demos and all the goodness that they bring.
Great stuff, great stuff. And actually, we've just been joined by Matt Putoff. He's coming last minute, better late than never. So, Matt, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Matt Putoff. I am a VMware Technical Account Manager in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania region here in Western Pennsylvania. Just happy to be here. Knew I wasn't in the right space when I was the only one joining the Google Meets, and I was like, wait a minute, this can't be the same link. But
yeah, no, I did see that. And also, I saved myself for last. I'm Patrick Redknapp. I'm a IT marketing consultant, and I've worked in the VMware community for many years, done quite a few VMworlds, and I'm here to make sure the conversation is going the way it should on this opening panel. If you are watching on YouTube, then don't forget to join the Orbital Jigsaw Discord because we are streaming there live as well. So yes, without further ado, let's get talking about virtual demos and do they matter? And I'll kick that over to you, Frank, to start off and see where we go from there.
Thanks, Patrick. Man, I want to say back in my younger days when I was a youth, virtual demos mattered way back then, back in the early 2000s, where we were selling products and solutions and had to visit customers and deal with things. And you can't bring all your hardware and equipment with you in your backpack every single time. So what do? You build a lab, you access it through the internet. Hopefully you have Wi-Fi or some slow cellular technology back then, and you would do some sort of demo for your customers to show that what you're telling them actually works, right? And man, things have changed to today where everything is online. Network access is ubiquitous in general, and especially in 2020 with the things that are happening in 2020 with all the different aspects with the pandemic, and now we'll work from home, just social distancing. It's even more critical to be able to demonstrate and show validity of technical solutions, and you have to, everything's done virtually, and that includes the demos and the lab work. So making this available is critical for us.
Sure, and I guess really, especially the fact that you need to make sure that you're delivering scalability with that as well. That's something that is particularly of value, and I guess that's something which Morris, you're going to be able to elaborate on a bit more, having you working in the Dell Technologies Demo Center.
Yeah, for sure. I think we'll do probably north of 250,000 demos this year. So scale is definitely important, and how you manage that customer experience and how you manage the experience for the person delivering the content. And just to add to that point, I think I can remember days, we all do probably, where you lug some device around, whether it be a server or a storage array or a laptop, and you plonk it on the customer's table, and you start to boot up and look for a projector and cables, and it's VGA or it's a HDMI, and there's a struggle in the room to get something working. Things have moved on a lot since then, obviously, over the last 10 to 15 years. And the other big element really is that it's not necessarily a product demonstration on its own anymore. More and more, it's a solution. And if we look at a lot of the capability, a lot of the demos we would build, they're solution orientated, and you may have 10 or 15 virtual machines. You may Active Directory, building out an application, because you're trying to showcase a customer, I guess, how they can solve the challenge for their business and how this solution will actually support what they're trying to do. So, many cases, your virtual lab can be 100 gigs of RAM just for one individual lab. So scale and being able to do that, for hundreds of thousands of people or thousands of people that concurrently is a huge challenge, and it's one of the biggest challenges really in terms of delivering great demos continuously.
Yeah, and I'm sure customer demonstrations are one of the key things that customers are looking for nowadays. You want to be able to test products as well. You want to be able to let your staff look at it, and you want to be able to spin up virtual labs very easily and just get your hands dirty and take a look at exactly what you're using. So I making it like a switch quickly, that access is very important. I think that's something which really is needs to be focused on a lot more, especially when you're dealing with virtual demos. So I guess, Mark, what would your take be on that?
Yeah. So from a customer perspective, basically I've been a customer my whole career, and I could tell that demos have definitely evolved. Basically with virtualization technology, they've got a lot better, and vendors are able to tailor a demo to basically things that we're looking for and in our environment and that type of thing. So I definitely value a virtual demo, because you're able to tailor it to things that we have concerns about or things that we're trying to fix our environment.
And maybe just to add, Patrick, to that, to add to what Mark said, I think in the past it was a challenge, maybe necessarily with firewalls, VPNs, to get connected to demos. We're fortunate, I guess, in Dell Technologies. We're using the VMware Learning Platform, which is a SaaS-based cloud by VMware that allows us to kind of present a very seamless capability in terms of connectivity, and also it kind of maintains, your demo environment for you in that, you can actually deploy lab environments in seconds. And we all know that it takes more than seconds to boot them up, but it takes away all that pain from the end user, so that your user or your sales engineer in the field, who's busy on the road, or maybe virtually these days, obviously not on the road as much, they want to be able to connect seamlessly and easily, and they want to know when they go to customer site, they're not going to get caught with firewalls, VPNs, or these other challenges. So having HTML5 based remote control, to me, was one of the biggest breakthroughs in terms of simplicity of getting access to your environment. And it was one of the reasons that, I suppose, the trend from moving away to having a laptop with, as much RAM as you could cram into it possible, and building your own environment. I know every engineer loves building their own environment. They love to tinker, and it's great fun. But if you want consistency, and if you want a scalability and a consistent state of a lab that it'll work every time, deploying them through the cloud in a consistent way, and having a platform like the VMware Learning Platform for us has been transformational.
Sure. And Matt, would you? I guess you have a bit more insight on that as well. I see you smiling away there.
Oh yeah. I just remember back at the start of my career, I was basically a NOC guy in our security or the security division of a large major financial corporation, and I remember these big, huge, gigantic IDS boxes, right? That these vendors would bring in, and 9 times out of 10 they would leave them there, and we'd turn them into Quake servers after a while and play late at night when nothing's going on. But no, I mean the virtual labs. I mean, hands-on labs is a invaluable tool that I use with my customers all the time, right? I use it for enablement, right? To get them in there, right? Hey, do whatever you need to do, break it, just restart it. We're good, right? And I even suggested we use it pretty heavily in the community with building home labs. Hey, go in there into the hands-on lab and start tweaking stuff. And again, if you break it, we can just restart it and you have a fresh new lab. So that consistency is always there, right? And another thing, seeing the evolution from the big honking IDS servers to what it is now, it's like, you come in now, it's hey, fire up this SaaS service and here's some credits or whatever to use to demo this product or even run this product in your environment for a set period of time, or even as simple as an OVA, right? It's like, hey, just drop this OVA in your demo environment or your lower tier or wherever that you don't have to have change control and all that stuff and knock yourself out, right? So, I mean, like, I think it was both Mark and Maurice said, customers want to get in there. They want to tweak the knobs and really figure out how that stuff works, right? And hands-on lab and just dropping a simple OVA into a virtual environment is so much easier than what it used to be. I mean, I was the guy that was pulling wires to the data center to hook up a test server, right? So definitely know how that is.
Yeah, and I guess it's more, as well, the simplicity and the ability to solve problems a lot more easily than you would have back in the day, because you're dealing with less physical problems and more problems that you can solve remotely or solve with SaaS or whatever. So I think that's where this really shines in particular, and even more in nowadays due to the fact that connectivity is kind of been really important for 2020, and I think that's something which we can touch on now because connect especially with demos. Connectivity is just as important, and particularly now because we're all kind of distributed and spread around the globe, and we don't always have the physical access nowadays that we would in today. So I guess that's a good talking point to touch on as well, and I'll kick that one over to Frank.
Yeah, that's really important, Patrick. And there are a couple thoughts that I've been having as I've been hearing this great conversations, and it's absolutely true that we need to have that availability, and everything's accessed through the public internet to these virtual environments, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's a private cloud and colo data centers, or whatever the case may be, but we're accessing it through the public internet. So there are two main things that I always think about here. And number one is it has to be available. Find the sales guy or the sales engineer, which I've done that in the past. And I'm kind of happy I don't have to carry that bag anymore. But in that role, when I schedule something with a customer, I expect to be able to access that environment immediately and efficiently. If it's not working because there's a bug or there's a flaw or there's some sort of connectivity issue, that's on me. It's not my fault, but it's on me because the customers look at me and looking at my company and saying, what are you doing? You can't get your act together to get this demo done for me. So you have to have that availability. And the second piece is because we are going through the public infrastructure to get to these environments, and there's who knows what's going on, you have to deal with security. So security becomes a little more of a challenge because you can't just say, drop this, like you said, Matt, drop this OVA into your hypervisor and boom, you're done and you're in a local lab environment, you're completely self-contained. That doesn't work now. It has to be accessed through this environment, and now there are potentials for other people to do it. And really and truly, there's potential for me, if I was the sales engineer that's working with a customer, to screw things up. Because I might not be the brightest person on the planet, which I will admit that I'm not. So we need to have the availability, which is number one, first and foremost. It has to be accessible. And number two, we have to have security. And a lot of this stuff is done over HTTP, HTTPS through some sort of web interface. So you need some sort of security protections like a WAF firewall, or like you were saying, Matt, like an IPS or things like that. But it has to be there. And then more, so you're saying the scalability, the number of demos that you mentioned, you said something like 250,000? Crazy numbers to manage that scale. So you can't put that all on one big server and expect everybody to get to it in one simple environment. You have to somehow scale your environment out to be able to allow the access for, hundreds of demos a day. And how do you do that? So there's a lot of complexities. And the good thing is, And I guess part of the reason that I'm here and talking about this with Kemp and load balancing technology is that load balancing technology can help enable some of that, incorporate it to give you that agility, that scalability, that elasticity, and even security. So yes, and I don't want to discount all the other technologies and all the other work that is put into these different environments to make it work. But you have to have some of these core principles and foundational technologies like load balancing to make it all come together and be able to create a nice, easy environment for you to manage and for your customers, in this case, maybe the sales teams and the end users, to be able to access and work efficiently. So huge stuff that we have to deal with in today's world.
Yeah, and I guess that's something which Morris is working with quite regularly on. When you're working with Dell Technologies, you're gonna and you've got those environments that are so large, it's going to be a daily challenge, especially when it comes to updating rules for vulnerability, stuff like that. It's something where you've really got to have that connectivity and availability.
Yeah, for sure. And look, I suppose the demo Dell Technologies Demo Center and the team that I manage globally, we're fortunate enough to be behind Big Brother, as we call them, or Dell IT or Dell Digital. And they provide most of the security. But we do have our platform connected to the internet, just like you called out. And in that case, we were delighted a number of years ago to implement the Kemp Web Application Firewall. Excuse me, the fumble. And that's really proved to be fantastic in front of our business portal. And really, what it's done for us is a couple of things. One is the whole area of security audits, compliance. Ensuring that we're always compliant with all the latest standards, and making sure that making it very simple to manage and to keep all our firewall rules and changes up to date. Secondly, then obviously it has been brilliant in terms of giving us a very stable platform 24/7, because we've got an active cluster, and behind that we've got an active passive set of web services, and the Kemp is able to detect if we ever have a problem and it fails over seamlessly. And finally, really, we've got users connecting from New Zealand all the ways to Latin America, so all across the globe. I think about 130 different countries. And so getting good performance around caching of content, particularly of web content, etc., is also very important to us, so that the user experience is pretty seamless. So security is definitely important, but the user experience then after that is very important as well, in terms of making sure it's pretty seamless to our users. And thankfully, from the business portal, then they pick a lab that they want, they go select it, and they deploy it, and then we connect into our infrastructure that powers all of these.
Sure, and I guess really, that's definitely looking at Kemp as a load balancer. I want to talk about I want to move to load balancers in general, obviously, because they all do different things. They all do the same thing as well. But Mark, you're in a unique situation because, well, not in a unique situation, but you're in a good situation to comment on this. I'd say, working for NJVC, you deal with rather large environments, and you obviously work with very varied environments as well. So I'd be interested to hear your take on that, and see if there's anything that we can glean from your opinions on that.
My take on what? What was the question again?
We were talking about load balancers in general and how they and connectivity.
So yeah, my take on load balancers is they're definitely an awesome technology. We use them all the time in our environment for different situations. Yeah, I mean, it's just being able to put devices behind those load balancers to make sure that things are going to be up all the time. We can take one particular device down while we're working on it, and then put it back behind the load balancer is a lifesaver. So it's a definitely needed technology, and no matter which type of load balancer you're using, it's definitely well used and an awesome technology.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, we can move on a bit to more kind of like security and hardening as well, because I think that's just as important. I mean, connectivity is one thing, but obviously, the security is something which is just as important as well. And I think Frank touched on that, and so did you, Morris. So I'm going to throw it over to Matt, and we can talk about security and how that's kind of something that's kind of raised its ugly head nowadays more than ever, because we're in the COVID world right now, and obviously security is paramount, and that's something which we really do need to focus on as well in the remote world that we're in nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's security to the point where it's affecting the user, right? So you want that to be as seamless as possible. That goes from the load balancer to make sure that the loads balanced across, whether it be at a web application, whether it be a digital workspace environment, whatever it is, but to be able to not only secure from the outside, from that what everyone used to worry about is that outside perimeter, but from also on the inside, right? Because I mean, security is not just the outside anymore. It's inside. It's ransomware. It's all the engineer that just got fired. It's stuff like that. So I mean, it is one of those things that needs to be kind of become, and not to like drink the Kool-Aid here, but the intrinsic, right, into your infrastructure, right? It just doesn't start at the user and work its way down, or at the core and work its way up, right? It's something that we got to think about through the entire stack.
Yeah, and it's about having intelligent software and intelligent services that you can use to help provide value to your customers as much as anything else. As a vendor, that's something which you're going to have to be focusing on key. And I would say, obviously, this is something that I could throw back over to Frank and Morris, because obviously you two have that relationship. But I would definitely say that that is paramount. And Frank, obviously that's something which you've got experience in. And if I guess really, if you've got any stories you could tell us about that, if you've got any insight on that as well.
I think the key thing here is, in terms of security, is that it's multi-layered, and the way security threats have evolved over the time, and really, I would say in the past 5 years, is that the security threats, and you probably hear this all the time from the other vendors, they're more intelligent. And what do we mean by more intelligent? It means that there's a lot more application context in these security threats. So it's not just your network attacks of your TCP fin attacks and your SYN flood attacks and your other types of network type, and they exist, yes, but it's about application layers. So understanding application and having application awareness. And this is where, as Morris mentioned, the web application firewall technologies, for example, which makes a lot of sense, for example, in the load balancing technology, because they're both doing that content inspection. So might as well take care, kill two birds with one stone, so to say. Right. So if you're doing the inspection, let's take care of the security aspects for the web content. And then it becomes important to really manage that. And as Morris said, it's all about management, because security is painful. Honestly, right? Security is painful to the point where I can't take any more pain. This is how much security I'm going to apply. And so when you build the security policies and develop and try to deploy it, you need to make it as simple and easy to use as possible. And then this also applies then. There are multiple we could spend all day on this, talking about the compliance, as Morris mentioned, also the compliance issues. You have your compliance standards, and in the tech industry, we have some compliance things that we need to deal with, but in other industries, you have things like PCI DSS for the financial industry. You have HIPAA for healthcare in the US. You have FERPA for educational, for student record protection. You have all these compliance issues, and you need to try to manage and maintain that. So having the records, having the reporting, having all the pieces that come together becomes very important, and then tying all that together. But ultimately, for the purpose of this conversation, security is about protecting one of the key things, I think, is securing that demo environment from that the unauthorized public access, to the point where you can control that environment. Because the last thing you want is, you don't want a hacker to get into that environment and screw things up for your salespeople and engineers and your customers, number one. And number two, you certainly don't want a competitor to potentially hack into your environment and do all sorts of nefarious things. So maintaining that environment and maintaining security and availability for that application is critical. And it's all about application experience. Morris has said this a couple times. It's all about maintaining that customer experience. So the customer experience into the environment, to make sure that they have a good take on how it responds to them, the access, and how it feels, and all this comes together. So we need to really get those things together and bring that into one piece. And again, I'm being biased here, but I believe load balancing technology is a core component of bringing all this together.
Sure. I mean, obviously we're focusing quite a lot here, but obviously this is the VMworld conference as well that we're here for. So I guess I'm going to throw it out there, and whichever of you want to jump on this first, find me. Are there any VMware tool sets that we should be discussing, or do we want to mention here? And I'd imagine one of you is going to jump in on this very quickly. So
I'll be happy to jump in. I'll be happy to jump in on that, Patrick. So look, I started, I'm in Dell 15 years. We started doing demonstration or building a remote demo platform, I think in 2010. And we've done about 2 million remote demos since then. And definitely on the early days, I think like lots of companies, there was the battle of the sales engineer in the field using their own laptop, building their own, versus we built ones with vCenter. We had scripts that created vApps. We tried to isolate them with VLANs. We tried to use remote desktop to connect them. We use lots of different technology to try and give you a good experience. But look, it failed lots of times, is the reality. And it was always a struggle to give consistent access. And there was always the battle of the sales engineer going, try to use it, it didn't work, and the struggle. And one of the biggest game changers really is over the last number of years for us is at this stage now, we effectively have 3 clouds. We've got a software-defined private cloud, all powered obviously by our own technology. We've got another hybrid cloud that we leverage, and then we've got a burst capability for large events. But overarching our cloud infrastructure and our software-defined data center, which has made it so easy to build labs and to be able to scale them and to be able to manage them. But for us, the breakthrough really is leveraging the VMware Learning Platform, which is a SaaS-based cloud which sits on top of all of our infrastructure. And it sees all 3 of our clouds as locations where our content is hosted. And if we have a failure, for example, in one of our cloud environments, all it does is it takes it offline seamlessly and it continues to serve up the content from another location. It also serves up based on location. So users that are in West Coast, America are getting content from the nearest cloud versus users that are getting content from, say, an APJ region or European region. Because latency is obviously never your friend in terms of connectivity to lab infrastructure and lab environments. So for us, really, in terms of VMware tool sets, the VMware Learning Platform, and that's SaaS-based technology, which has become a product now over the last year, really has been the game changer for us. On top of having a fantastic software-defined data center, powered obviously, we're fortunate in terms of our own technology. So you get a very reliable infrastructure, and really what it means is that you can focus on, what you should be focused on, which is building great content, talking to the sales engineers in the field, and talking to your product teams and asking them what should be in this lab. What do I need to be either train my team, or what do I need to give my engineer, he or she in the field, an environment that lets them win or showcase the technology in the best possible format. So for me, really, that's what's happened for us, is that we've got back the time to focus on our content and providing great customer experience. And I'm sure, Matt, you're going to have a bunch of stuff too coming from the VMware side in terms of it. I'm sure you've leveraged the VMware hands-on lab team as well in terms of the technology that they're using.
Yeah, I can see Matt grinning away there. I'm sure he's got something to say on this. So I'm gonna ping that over to him, because I'm sure he can go deep on this.
No, I won't go deep on it. I mean, it's not so much for lab environments, but I find a lot with my customers, particularly in some of their environments. It's not only having NSX and doing the fancy networking, and micro segmentation is an easy use case for NSX, and lots of times that kind of gets forgotten about, right? It provides kind of that's, I don't want to call it safety net, but if a machine gets infected, if it gets compromised, right, it's in that own sphere, assuming that everything's configured correctly, right? But a lot of the stuff in terms of access and user access and in lab environments, right? And some of the struggles I believe that the HOL team had earlier was around kind of having a single sign-on, right? I mean that's one of my customers. It is a nightmare, right? But because it's not consistent across the multiple environments and multiple services that they have to serve up to their end users. So even troubleshooting that and getting their users to their services is a huge challenge, right? And that goes to the whole kind of security and how secure can we make it and without being painful, right? Without limiting access, and that's always will be a balance that us technologists have to battle, right? And a lot of times, compliances make it very, very difficult to think outside of the box when you're providing solutions, right? And that's where kind of your lab and learning demos are kind of critical in this whole process, right? And the fact that I think that hey, I can basically blow away one of these environments if I do something wrong, or if I somehow get affected, or I expose something out to the internet that wasn't supposed to be exposed, right? So that the whole reusability and the automation wrapped around that to kind of, hey, I messed this one up, reset, and then the stack goes up again, right?
Yeah, well, you're definitely touching on automation as well, and that's also just as important, especially with these environments. And I guess that's something which I can throw across to Mark, especially when it comes to VMware tools and also automation in general. So I guess that's something you've dealt with on a regular basis.
Yes, it's been nice to have virtualization that you can throw all these different tools into your virtual environment and not have to have racks and racks of equipment. I remember before we had virtualization, how much physical equipment we had to have around. It was so difficult if you wanted to change something around and try something different. It was just so difficult to do that. But with virtualization technology and all these different products, you have a virtual appliance that you can just stick into VMware, and that makes it so nice that you can try all these things out in the lab and get them configured like you want, and then you can throw it into production because you've already tested it out in a lab environment, which makes it extremely easy.
Sure. I guess it's bringing it back down to being customer focused, providing like that fantastic service that your customers are going to want, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to differentiate you from anyone else who's serving your point of business. And I guess that's where it brings us kind of full circle back round again to talking about the demo centers and why they're important again, because it's just it's kind of a tool that is going to allow your customers just to be able to deliver so much more on the promises that they're going to be making, and also allows the users to be able to deliver on what they're supposed to be doing as well. I'll throw that one over to Frank, and as usual, you've always got lots to say on this, so go for it.
So these are great discussions, and y'all are bringing up some great points where this virtualization and everything is great. Give you an example. I used to work back in my younger days. I used to work for a large bank, and anytime we wanted to make a change in our lab environment or do something in the production environment, I would have to get out of my office, go down outside the building, across the street to another building, go into that building. And since I worked for a bank, we had a retina scanner, we had a man trap, we had, all these authentication methods go through. And then I had to go in and I had to get the union guys to make all the cabling change. It was a nightmare, right? And virtualization makes things so much easier. But the other key point here is that as technologists, we are not experts at everything. I like to say I'm a load balancing expert. I know my network switching and routing pretty good. If you ask me to write a web application, I'm going to probably format up somebody and pay them on the side. So I'm not an expert at everything. Nobody is an expert at anything. And if they claim they are, then you need to check some credentials. So this automation starts becoming, and this virtualization and the tools that we use for the orchestration automation, such as VMware Orchestrator and VMware Automation, start becoming critical, because they take the expertise out of the person and put it into a script, into a tool. So now, if you need to make changes in the environment, you don't have to be an expert at all the different technologies that you need to make changes to. You don't have to be a firewall expert, a load balancing expert, an application expert, a networking expert. You just say, I want to run this tool or this script to make these changes, and boom, it pushes it out, make it changes. Like you were saying, Matt, earlier, if I wanted to reset my environment, is now as simple as saying, run the script to wipe everything and to reset all the different things to the original scenarios. I don't have to manually do those things. So taking advantage of this automation and the virtualization is huge for these demo environments, because I can guarantee you, no matter how good these engineers and salespeople and customers are, they don't have all the tools in their tool belt. And number one, and number two, they don't know all the vendor specific things either. So leveraging that, and I would love to hear from Morris also, how do you help enable your customer base, your engineers and sales teams to leverage all these technologies without having to read 5 million manuals that are going to cover your wall like I have behind me?
Yeah, sure. I probably won't go too deep in this, because it involves lots of process and standards, etc. But we've kind of broken it probably into kind of two simple formats, really. One is the what we call the content creators, and they are sales engineers in the field. There are product marketing, there are product engineering teams, and we create content just like you talk about. We put it on the automation, the platform, and it looks after everything. It deploys the lab on their behalf, it destroys the lab on their behalf, it gives them access on their behalf. And just like you're talking about there, they don't need to know anything what goes on in the background. Then there's the consumer, which is our sales engineer and our partners. And for them, really, it's as simple as clicking on a link, and says, I would like lab X, and it deploys it for them, gives them access, and it makes it really simple. And really, if we look at the journey, I guess things have changed a lot. I guess I'm probably 25 years in IT is a long time, but you were either maybe you started off as a support person, or maybe you started off being the demo guy or the demo girl, and it was like a rite of passage. Could you support the customer and fix and deal with the support, working in support, or could you deal with doing a demo basically and being able to deliver a demo and convince someone of the message that you had to deliver in terms of the product. And really what we've seen, I guess, there's been a huge shift, I think, now over the last number of years, where the person who's doing a demo is that you're not just the demo person, really. Sales engineers now are more, to me, they're trusted advisors. They have a relationship with the customer. They're there to make sure that there's a successful outcome of whatever new technology that customer is going to adopt. And along the path, they are going to use a demo platform, and they are going to show customer product and the solution. And they may do one demo or several demos, but we're finding even more. The other big change is that, technologies now, or demos, or getting access to demo is not something that you have to, phone up the engineer or book something in advance. We're putting our content directly on, our DellTechnologies.com. I know Microsoft have done the same, VMware have done the same, and so have, nearly all vendors. They're putting this technology out there. They're putting their labs or their demos on the public internet, and they're letting customers get access directly. So really, that changes then the role of the sales engineer. So he or she really has, the customer's already probably played with the technology several times. So it's kind of accelerating the sales cycle, but it's also letting the sales engineer, I suppose, fulfill that role of being a trusted advisor, as opposed to maybe back to what you were saying, spending time configuring stuff or making sure things are working, etc. So really, I think just all this technology and this automation has made virtual demos. I think that was the topic, Patrick, that you at the start. Are they important?
Yeah.
And they've never been more important in my book, to the point where we're giving customers direct access right now, letting them play with the technology. So when they come to talk to a sales engineer about the solution or the challenges that they have, they're much more meaningful, and they're much more about how can we guarantee the success for the customer.
So I think we've been talking about that shift that you're talking about, whereby we're moving with the way the technology develops, and the sales cycle has to evolve to go with that. So you're becoming that trusted advisor, or the technical salespeople are becoming more trusted advisors, and just being able to say, right, here it is, you have direct access, go and get it, and then we'll prove to you why this is what you need to do and why we're suggesting that. And I think that begs the question: where is this all going? Where's it going? I mean, we know where we are now, but what's the future of all this? And I think that's a really interesting point to look at, because at the end of the day, that's what most vendors will want to be asking as well. What not only what differentiates them from another vendor or another VMware partner, but also what's happening in the future? What are we going to expect to see? Are we going to remove basically the access to a point whereby it's just going to be boom, and you're not even going to have to have that human element involved? You're just going to go online and get it without, and you're not even going to need that sales interaction at all. It's just going to be direct.
So to add on to Maurice's comments there, right? That the sales cycle is changing. Your SEs and your TAMs, right? We're becoming more trusted advisors, right? We have our original touch point discussion and be like, hey, we have this HOL out there. Go out there, check it out. We can set up a session, run through it. Answer any questions that you have, and we become more of a hey, wait a minute. You said you went out there, but looking at the access logs, right? You're not there, right? So it is a little bit of balance. So it's kind of, I find myself doing that quite a bit, because you'll get pushback and be like, well, did you actually go through that? Well, yeah, I did, but then it's like, wait a minute, no, you didn't. So let's go through it again. So there is some level of accountability and pressure that we, as trusted advisors, can push on them a little bit. But as far as the future, I think the future is happening now, right? Is we have these cloud-based services, right? We set up these POCs, and we give them access to a service wherever it's hosted, right? And they go in there, they tweak it, they point it at an environment or environments, and they say, okay, yeah, this, we have our set of success criteria that we want to see out of this product, this service. And okay, yeah, we met all those. And then it's like, okay, so instead of running on, credits or just free time that the vendor is giving you, like, hey, we just turn it on. Now you're subscribing to that service, that product, right? We're seeing that now. I mean, the cloud services from VMware is almost exactly that, right? I mean, sometimes we got to jump through hoops to get access and stuff like that. But I mean, them saying, okay, yeah, this is great. This is exactly what we want to use it for. And then you kind of flip the switch. It's like, okay, now you're paying for it. So let's continue to leverage it out there, right? And honestly, I think it's going to slide more that way. I mean, we'll still have HOLs and stuff like that. But I think that's going to be more for kind of learning and really getting in there and kicking the tires and not being afraid to break stuff. Whereas, demo environments that we set up as a service essentially are hey, these are great. Click. Hey, now they're a product. Now you're paying for them, and now you're using them in the environment. You don't have to go back and reconfigure everything again, right? I mean, I personally, that's the kind of where I see it going, and I think we're seeing the future now, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to chip in on that. I would agree on that there. That I guess if we look at maybe the SaaS platforms, we probably have a lot to thank maybe to them in terms of they started off in terms of you could just log in, get a trial account, play with the technology immediately, and I think the same thing is happening basically more and more in terms of being able to get access to the technology, demonstrate it. But the next step would be, well, actually, can I do a proof of concept with it? And actually, this is awesome. Can I, deploy that and keep it, or can I package it up and get it deployed in my data center? And just making that whole process more seamless and a shorter cycle, really, in terms of particularly on enterprise selling, which is a much longer cycle typically.
Sure, I do. I just want to be conscious of getting Mark's opinion on this, and obviously with regards to that. So, Mark, do
Yeah.
you think that?
So from a customer perspective, it's awesome that I don't have to wait for a vendor to fly in. I don't have to schedule him, work around his schedule, wait for him to come in and fly in. We can just schedule a demo online automatically, and that works out great for us. So it speeds that whole process up. But like Matt talked about earlier, we can just jump online, hands-on lab type things, and work through that process ourselves. We don't even have to wait and interact with a sales guy or a demo guy. So to me, that's really awesome. And so I could just work through all that, figure out what all my questions are, and then schedule something with somebody afterwards, after I've done a sort of a hands-on demo myself. So I really think, like you said earlier, we are in the future right now, being able to just get online and demo the product ourselves.
And
But you always want to work with your team, though, right?
Yes.
And you're definitely seeing that shift from your end to more of the trusted advisors coming in as well, and just allowing that enablement.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely it's nice having those labs that we can get on there anytime, try out all the different products. It's great that different vendors are doing that, but I mean, you definitely you're not going to know it all just by going through those, and so you figure out what your questions are, what you think you can't do, and then once you have all those, then you can reach out to those TAMs that can guide you and answer all your questions and point you in the right direction.
Sure. Well, I think we're kind of exhausting the direction we're going in right now at the moment, but I'm gonna jump back over to Frank here, and I'm gonna say, because I've got a point here which I did want to bring up. But first of all, I'm gonna say, if anyone's watching this, if you do have any questions, we can do a Q&A in about 5 minutes, because I think we've got about 15 minutes left. So if first of all, I've got a point here which was actually sent to me, and it was any funny issues / stories / scenarios that you've had with regards to this. Yeah.
That's a good question. I've had so many things with online demos. I mean, the most obvious one that I've had in the past, and something that we hopefully fix, and this is an issue that you have doing online demos, and Morris and y'all at Dell and VMware, y'all have such a great environment so that it's so scalable and flexible and resets. One of the good stories that I have is, like, I go to a customer or doing something. I think in this case, I was doing it remotely with the customer, and I access our virtual lab at our company to show them a demo. And of course, it doesn't work right. And the reason is because it's not reset. Because another engineer just prior, even though I had reserved the time, had refigured it to do something completely different. So now, it's funny now. It wasn't funny back then at the time. But now I'm scrambling, trying to say, this isn't working right. And I know it's going to take me hours to reconfigure this thing to get things where I want to go. So now you have to kind of do things off the cuff and say, well, let me just walk you through what would have happened. Let me explain how this is going to happen. And let me then schedule another time with you, or show you some slides on my laptop that I have that are not the same thing, to show you what it would have been like. So this is the type of environment that we want to get to. And this is kind of like when we're talking about these virtual demos and us self-serve and everything. It's awesome, and it's the way to go. And ultimately, we're going to get a situation where I'm going to call it like an interactive movie, or those children's books where it's choose your own story, where you pick, and turn to page X. That's what this demo environment is going to be. And it has to be, because everybody that's accessing these aren't going to be like we're saying, aren't the experts. They don't know what they're doing. They're just playing around. They're tooling around. They're just getting in and saying, let's kick the tires and see what happens. But I have no idea what this technology really does for me. I'm just told that it does X. So you need a big portion of hand holding to make it work right. And so the interactive mode and the scripting and what Morris has done and creating this content to make it available is absolutely important. And it's also, whether we say it or not, it's never going to be to a point where it's full digital AI, whatever you want to call it. You're going to have to at some point in time have that personable interaction for the person to say, well, this is my use case, these are my criteria, and this is what I wanted to do, and this is what I saw. Can you help me bridge that gap? We need to have that person at least in the foreseeable future to make that work right. So it's going to be very interesting. And by the way, people are saying, this is my dog, Brewster. Just going to say hi, Brewster.
Brewster's awesome.
But this stuff is really cool. And this online demo capability is critical. And again, going back to the beginning of this conversation, is all about making sure that the application customer experience is there, so that people are willing to use it. So you need to have that availability, that security, and those other things that we talked about at the beginning to get to where we are today. Those are very foundational criteria to make this a success.
Patrick, I've got I don't know if it's funny, it's probably more tragic. I don't know if you want me to share it or not in terms of demo story.
Yeah.
It was about 25 years. I was in security. I used to work in security about 25 years ago. Back in iOS 4, so that tells you how old it is. It was back in iOS 4 days, but we were doing a demo for a customer. There was a bunch of engineers on a customer site, and it was a pen testing software on a laptop, and we're all saying, "Oh yeah, let's show you, how good this is, and it'll audit your Active Directory." So kick this off, this demo, and it took quite a while. So we said, "Look, let's go and have a coffee break." And came back about 15, 20 minutes later to the fact that we just locked out about 600 Active Directory accounts because somebody ticked the tag to brute force the AD accounts and not just check the security. So we locked out all 650 employees from their systems, which obviously didn't go down very well. And really the moral of the story was, if they had a demo environment at the time, they could have leveraged that in an isolated bubble, and that probably is something we haven't covered on the topic of the show today. Is that demos are great for sales and for sales engineers, but they're absolutely awesome for support teams as well, and for customers. If you somebody's asking you to initialize an array or a number of drives or disks on a storage array or a server, and you don't exactly know what you're doing. Nothing beats being able to try it out in advance. And so demos have multiple purposes, not just from selling perspective, but also from a support and a services perspective.
Sure. Okay, I'll leave. I think we're going to probably wrap up in a minute, but I'll leave that open to Matt and Mark if you've got anything interesting or funny or an anecdote that you would like to share around this at all in your very illustrious careers.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I have a similar one to Maurice. Back in my security days, I was managing our external firewall for the company that I was working for, and I got a call. It was a third-party management. I got a call saying, hey, we have some weird activity going through your firewall. And I logged in, and I'm like seeing all this sequential scanning happening, going out to the internet, and I basically kind of looked around. I'm like trying to figure out what was going on that day, and we had a vendor in, happened to be AV software, and they wanted to grab some subnets to work on the deployment of the AV software, and they couldn't figure out which subnets, so they put 111, 255, 255, 255 in. So we were scanning the internet to see if they had instances of the AV software. So that's always a good one, right? It's like you never go blind. always ask questions. But yeah, I've seen hundreds of stories like that. Like Maurice said, hey, we locked out 680 accounts, stuff like that. Particularly back in the days where, bring the laptop in, pen testing software, knew exactly where that was going. Been there, done that, seen it.
Yep, still every day is a school day, unfortunately. You're gonna get days like that nowadays. Hopefully, fewer as we go along, but these things are sent to test us, definitely. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap up now. I think we're pretty much at there. I would like to thank all of you for coming on the on this little chat that we've had for Opening Acts for VMworld. And yeah, everyone, like I said, thank you to Kemp for sponsoring this panel, and also all the rest of the sponsors who are sponsoring Opening Acts. And I would like to also say that if anyone out there is watching this on YouTube, you can go to Discord, and you can join the Discord community as well, and you can chat with the community at VMworld, and you can just interact with everyone, and that's at discord.gg/orbital jigsaw. And I think that pretty much wraps it up for today. So thank you, gentlemen. I hope you have a good virtual VMworld, and I hope you're going to enjoy it from your side of the screen.
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, everybody. See you, folks.